Hi, I'm Melissa Reader, and welcome to Agehood, the podcast for us midlifers who are quietly carrying it all: aging parents, adult kids, our work, relationships, finances, and our own next chapter. If this sounds like you, well, you are in your agehood, and it's time we talked about it. Nikki Gemmell has made a career out of writing the things that are often left unsaid, shining a light into the private, complicated corners of life. In this conversation, she opens up about one of her most deeply personal chapters. In 2017, Nikki published After, a memoir written in the wake of her mother Elaine's decision to end her life after spiralling into unmanaged chronic pain and addiction. And then just a few years later, Nikki and her siblings were thrust into another caregiving role, this time for her beloved father, whose death from lung cancer played out in a really different way. We talk about grief, guilt, caregiving, and why so few of us feel in any way prepared for this stage of life, especially when the system just keeps pushing us towards rushed decisions in hospital corridors when we're stressed and we're at our most vulnerable, rather than meaningful conversations around our kitchen tables. If you've ever felt stretched too thin, held too much, or wondered how to make space for the hard conversations with the people that you love, this one is for you. Nikki Gemmell, welcome to Agehood. It is so lovely to have you on the show with me today. And we're here to talk about a topic that, not too many people love to talk about, but it's also pretty real. It's pretty important that we have these conversations. And that is, the future chapters of life, aging, illness, and, the end of life. So thank you for carving out some time for a chat.
Oh, fine. My pleasure.
Hey, in 2017, you've written lots of fabulous books, but I'm particularly going to go to the one that you wrote about your experience with your mum, Elaine's decision to end her own life. And that book was called After. So I'd love to really talk about that chapter of your life today. But before we get into that part of your story and Elaine's story, let's talk a bit about your story in the context of the sandwich generation. Like, we're both women in our 50s. We both have a sense of what that sandwich generation experience is like. You're caring for kids who are almost adult, but they still need you. They need you in different ways, but God knows they still need you. You're juggling work, relationships, finances, everything in between, and you have aging parents who need you more and more. That's really what we're seeing out there, and there are lots of versions of that sandwich story. But can I go back to the years before your mum's death, where you had 4 little kids? They were a lot younger. They probably needed you a lot more. Classic sandwich generation story. Tell me a bit about what life was like for you at that stage. How are you juggling everything when you had parents that needed you in terms of their care needs?
Well, in the years before my mum's death, yes, I had 4 kids. I've got 4 kids. Those days, my oldest was in year 9 and my youngest was still a toddler. And I was juggling full-time really work, even though I worked from home. So it kind of appears to a lot of people, and mum too at the time. She didn't realize how hard it was to keep everything going and to keep all the balls juggling in the air. I have an incredibly supportive partner, which is the greatest gift of my life. He still does the school lunches for me. He does a lot of the cooking. It just makes it easier. But back then, I can remember, financially we were more stretched than what we are now, which creates a huge it's like this big thumbprint of pressure. As much as anything, you're juggling to get your kids off to school, to keep everyone sane and happy and all the rest of it. So there was a lot going on. I was also traveling a bit. I still am traveling a bit with work. So that's always a huge juggle, leaving those 4 kids behind, and kind of the essay that I'd have to give to my partner before I left of, who needs to be at what soccer practice when and what time, and what school notes need to be signed, and just all that kind of stuff as I was trying to maintain my own career. My dad at that stage, he was elderly himself, but he was a great blessing. Sometimes when I traveled for work, he would just move in. He would come and stay for the week or whatever, and just help and be that full-time carer for the kids. And because my husband Andy, he would be away for work himself, traveling every day, commuting, and Dad could be at home because we did have the toddler in childcare, but not every day of the week because we couldn't afford that. So there was a lot going on. I feel like
so much, right? I've even, when you map out that schedule of everywhere your kids have to be in the week, that looks like a full-time job.
I know.
And then you kind of sit back and go, okay, well, now I've got to wedge my full-time job around that schedule. It's crazy.
I know, just writing that felt like a huge burden. I had to take time out to write the essay of every day. And I've learned since then, I just text ahead of time now, but it's taken me many years to do that. And also because we've got 2 who are in their early 20s. We've only got 2 at school now. But, back in those days, we had 3 at school and 1 as a toddler. So it was big. It was big.
It's huge. And let's face it, even when the kids are in their early 20s, they still need you. They just need you in different ways.
Oh, yeah. And he's currently sleeping on the couch. Shouldn't say that, but yeah. I thought once they finish school, that would be like, oh, they're off.
Yeah, I'm right here. I could talk for an hour on that now, yeah. But I won't.
I don't need them at the front of my head anymore. But no, life doesn't work like that. They're still very much there in the front and center of my thoughts.
I hear you. I hear you. And when I was watching Australian Story, the episode you did a few years ago, you said, oh gosh, I hate to say this, but Mum came 6th in my world at that stage because you had your husband. And I just think that just sums it up perfectly, right? Hard to say out loud, but so true. How did you juggle it all?
Well, you kind of go quietly mad and you're very exhausted and you wonder how you'll ever get to the end of it. And you just get the feeling no one understands really the incredible amount of pressure that you're under. I feel like my life's much calmer and smoother now. I'm somewhat out the other side. But just last week, I had a really stressful work job, and I could feel the cortisol, kind of the clench in my body, the stress levels from it. And it was like, wow, back in those days, I existed like that all the time. There was just a lot of stress going on as I tried to juggle all the balls. And it's a burden of guilt. You just feel guilty that, yes, oh my God, Mum feels like she's number 6 in the pecking order. My husband would probably say he's number 9 after the cat and the dog as well. God love him.
As he's making the lunches, he's reminding you.
He's fantastic and doing a fantastic job, but it's like, oh, there's so much else going on in my head. Yeah.
Are you seeing it in your friends? Are you seeing this kind of sandwich generation situation in some of your friendship groups, or even your work groups, like women who are dealing with parents who need them more and more and in different ways?
Yes, and we've got teenagers, and with all the hormonal huge changes going on with them, we have to give them leeway, and I completely understand their worlds are turning upside down. You just want to be there to support them. I think the ultimate goal for me in life is just to have happy kids. I kind of don't care now what they end up doing in life as long as they're just happy. And you're always trying to just keep everything on an even keel, and then at the same time you're thinking about the needs of your elderly parents, which become huger as time goes on. My beautiful mum, she decided to end it before it it became hard for any of us, which I feel in a way was like a womanly selflessness. She didn't want to be a burden on anyone. My beautiful dad, towards the end, I was changing his nappies. And that's just like that's the circle of life. I just thought, well, he did it for me once, I do it for him. And I just kind of stopped changing the nappies of my toddler boy, my youngest boy. So it's just like it's the endless cycle of what we do as women. We are pleasers, we are givers, of course we do it. It's hard though. I used to, when I pre-children and pre all of this existence, I used to write my novels until midnight, fueled by chocolate and champagne. And now
I love that.
Oh God, give me a 9 p.m. bedtime, because I'm just shattered. If I have to go out more than like once a week, it's like I just can't do it. I'm too tired. The crazy world around me just demands a quiet life, which of course is hard with kids.
It's really hard.
Schools and all the demands and work, and all the demands and pulling you in 1,000 different directions.
Yeah, like the mortgage doesn't stop because people need you more and in different ways, and your job doesn't necessarily get more flexible because people need you more and in different ways. So yeah, you've just really described, I think, the reality of what so many women are managing now across Australia and will, as our population continues to age. So it's a tough time.
Yes, and also thing, I'm in my 50s now, and I feel it kind of, but some of my girlfriends have felt it more, the slide into invisibility, and they're suddenly in their mid to late 50s being made redundant, and it's like the cruelty of that, so that suddenly they've got enormous financial pressures on them as well, when they are juggling with kids heading out into the world and elderly parents. It's just the burdens on the working mother. For some of us, perhaps a lot of us, they don't get easier, they get harder as we go.
And then we haven't even started to talk about the hormones.
Oh, God, on us or the aging parents?
Both, but like the midlife hormone meltdown that is making us go to bed at 9 o'clock at night, and just all the kind of complexity of trying to figure that out and know that you're not feeling yourself, and you've got so much more on your plate to deal with. Like, it's a tough chapter.
That's so true, because a lot of us are going through menopause. I can remember one of the last I had with Mum was because we'd never really talked about menopause as two women, which is shocking in a way and surprising looking back in hindsight. But I can remember asking her just before she died, I said, Mummy, when did your period stop? And she said 52. And I thought, oh, great. Hopefully I'll mirror Mum and I'll stop at 52. I'm 58. I had my last period about a month ago. And it's like, oh, God, when does this end? The menopause for me, I got every symptom you could get. That's been me. It's been kind of sleepless nights, hot flushes, exhaustion where I just want to go to sleep in the middle of the day, kind of mental fragility, a loss of confidence. I feel like I've been existing with low-level depression through my perimenopause, and I've never felt depressed in my life except for now. Felt like I'm going mad. And the rage, it's like, oh my God, I just want to stab people in the supermarket queue or on the road. It's like,
it's a total melting pot. It's a total melting pot.
I don't understand what's happened to me, but of course I do, because it's a hormonal tsunami. But at the same time, I've got to keep it all together for the 4 kids, the husband, and the parents.
That's it. That's the reality.
Yeah.
Nikki, can we go back to your mum's story a little more? And, tell me a little bit about what her final years were like. Are you happy to talk to that a bit?
Sure. It was really, look, she was amazing, Mum. She, I'm just looking at her photo now. She's so beautiful. I'm in my study. I've got her right next to my desk. I'm just trying to find it. I don't know if you can
Oh,
see.
hi, Elaine. Yeah. Oh, she's so elegant. Such a beautiful picture of
Gorgeous.
both
Yeah.
of you and one of your kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, gorgeous.
This is a baba. And so Elaine, incredibly glamorous. She was the mistress of reinvention. She was born in Cessnock to a working class coal mining family. She left school at 16 because that's what you were meant to do in Cessnock back in the day. And she was just meant to marry a coal miner and live in the suburbs and have her babies. And that's exactly what she did. And then she got divorced from my coal miner dad when I was about 10, 11, and reinvented herself. And it was the most incredible journey. She moved to Sydney. She ended up working at the old telecom, Telstra now, but she worked in the corporate headquarters in Sydney. She was a very impressive woman. But during her Cessnock days as a teenager, she'd been a dancer. She'd loved her ballet. And she thinks she ruined her feet from that. In the last year of her life, it was the January of the last year of her life, she had an operation on her foot because she had a lot of pain in her foot. And I remember going to the hospital here in Sydney, and she was as high as a kite after that operation. And what I didn't realize at the time was she was as high as a kite because she'd been given Oxycontin for the first time in her life. So she came home in incredible pain from this foot operation with a prescription for Oxycontin. And she loved that drug. And it's the most insidious, cruel drug in terms of addiction. So she suicided 9 months later in October, or 10 months later, October of that year. And she had a spiral from that operation in the January of that year. She just completely spiraled the foot operation. She was 79, 78 at the time, and then turned 79. It didn't work. I was furious at the surgeon. Anyway, she was in a lot of pain. It traveled up from her foot, up through her thigh, into her pelvis. And basically for Mum, she suddenly was living with chronic pain, and she didn't investigate how to try and combat that. She just dialed up the Oxycontin situation.
Yeah.
It was Oxycontin. She was doctor shopping all over the region to get more and more of the drug. And as I discovered, it wears off. Its efficacy wears off. And so she had to get more and more of it. I wrote about all of this in my book after, because when she suicided, I didn't understand what had happened. It was the most enormous mess of a shock. This beautiful, beautiful woman who'd been a model, just gorgeous and lovely, a lovely personality. But she was not telling us about the agony that she was going through with her chronic pain. So I wrote my book after to understand, really. And from that, I found out, I did my research on Oxycontin and found out all about it, and angry to this day in terms of the pharmaceutical company that supplies it and all the rest of it. But that's another story. So that in a nutshell is basically my mum's story. And then with that drug in October of that year, in a very lonely death, but possibly an empowered death. She wanted to do that. It was her will. She didn't leave a suicide note, but that's what she did.
Had you and your mum ever talked about the kind of later stages of her life? Did you have any conversations around that before her surgery or after? Did it ever come up?
Oh, yes, all the time. I mean, the absolute agony and the pain and the despair of the chronic pain, we talked about it all the time, because I can remember just sometimes her weeping her weeping
Mm.
pain and the despair and the helplessness and the hopelessness of, Nikki, I can't make this stop. I can't make the pain go away. I don't know what to do. We also talked about assisted dying. She was a great supporter of it, and it should be noted that this was 2015, so this was before any legislation had been passed in Australia to make assisted dying legal. So what Mum was doing was illegal. She was a great supporter of Philip Nitschke. She bought his handbook. She attended his forums. She asked me to go along with her sometimes, and I didn't want to. I didn't want to enter that world. I feel guilty now that I didn't accompany her more in terms of what she wanted to do. But in those days, pre-assisted dying legislation, I think she felt trapped, and there was no way. She could not make the chronic pain go away. She did not want to live with it. She did not want to end up in a nursing home. She'd made that very clear to me and my siblings. And I think she just felt this was the best solution, that, you know, she wouldn't be a burden on anyone if she just quietly went herself. What she couldn't have anticipated was, by doing that, by suiciding, the absolute mess that it created for my family and for my kids, you know, trying to explain that to young kids that Nonna, their beloved Nonna, who they adored, has left us, and she left us suddenly without any explanation. You know, trying to pick up the pieces from that over the years following, it's been really hard. It was just, it was, I think if she had realized the mess it left behind, she never would have done it. But it is what it is.
Yeah, and you've said how independent she was, you know, how much agency she
Yeah,
wanted to have throughout her life. So you can understand when she was managing levels of chronic pain that were beyond manageable,
yeah,
you know, that she wanted to have agency over that phase, I guess, that chapter. But gosh, must have been a lot for you as her daughter and for your kids, because the police arrived at your door, didn't they? After,
yeah,
that's how it happened? Yeah.
yeah. So having her bathroom renovated, and that was another thing that really pissed me off. Excuse my language, but you know, those tradies, you can just see it from their perspective. They just thought, oh, little old lady, we'll just come and go. You know, at the end of her life, she was showering at our place. We don't live too far away. We didn't live too far away from her, because the tradies had basically turned up, ripped out all her fittings, and not put anything back, so that she did not. I think she had a toilet to use, and she'd wash her hands in the laundry sink, and you know, brush her teeth in the laundry sink, but she didn't have a shower or a bath to wash herself, because the tradies would get another job and they'd go off to that. And this was going on for months. So I
Yeah.
think knew exactly what she was doing. And the night that she chose to leave us, the tradies were due to come the next morning. They had a key to continue with their work. They hadn't been there for a couple of weeks, and they let themselves in, and they were the ones who found Mum. So I think that was a final kind of up yours to them of, you know, you have driven me to absolute despair. It's like they just did not see her as an elderly woman, did not see how difficult they'd made it for her, did not meet their needs. And so basically the tradies found her in the lounge room with the telly still on, and the pill box of Oxycontin next to her, and she was just sitting there in her armchair in front of the television, and she was dead. And that became a police investigation. And so, you know, an hour or so after she was found, I had two police officers knocking on my door, not only telling me that my mother had died, but, you know, kind of inferring, wanting to know where she got the Oxycontin from, had I supplied it. And I can remember going, what's Oxycontin? I at that stage, in my ignorance, I had no idea what it was. This was 2015, so, you know, 10 years ago, actually, a decade ago. This so I just found it just so discombobulating and shocking. And so that's why I wanted to write about it, because it was like, they seem to think I've had something to do with this, that I've somehow aided mum in this whole thing. Mum knew
Mm.
through all her reading with Philip Nitschke that, you know, back in those days, if you assist someone to die, you could be, you know,
Implicated. Yeah.
minefield, you know. So she was, I think that was her being very, very careful with all her three children. She did not tell us what she was doing to save us and protect us. So it was just a very complicated situation all round.
And it's 10 years this year, is it, since your mum died?
Yeah.
Gosh. I mean, it's big, isn't it, to reflect back on that. Well, now we have assisted dying legislated in majority of states and territories. It's progress, I guess,
It's
isn't it?
help mum, because in New South Wales, you can't kind of join the scheme because of chronic pain. You know, you have to be terminally ill, or when she wasn't. So it would have been interesting how she would have navigated that. But I remember when the legislation came too, and as it's come through in various states, just going, "Yay, mum! You know, you fought so hard for that. You wanted that. You were such a supporter of that." So I know she'd be so pleased that, you know, people out there are getting the option to do it if they want.
Mm, mm.
And I would say, just having gone through it in a way, involve your family. You know, it's just so hard. I think you have to involve your family, but it's so hard to just do it secretly. It's hard for all of them.
Well, maybe I can ask you that in a slightly different kind of broader way. So, given all of that experience with your mum and also what you've kind of talked about a bit with your dad, do you think there are bigger conversations that we should be having between the sandwich generation and their parents and their in-laws about this stage of life?
Oh, look, absolutely. And I think very much in terms of nursing homes. Neither of my parents ended up in nursing homes, and I know they would have been hugely relieved about that. They were, both of them, absolutely dreading that situation. My dad, he died from lung cancer at 86, so he ended up in palliative care, and that was
Yeah.
another horrendous, just heartbreaking story in itself. Very different to mum's. But, you know, I've had grandparents who ended up in nursing homes. One of my grandmothers skipped in there, was as happy as Larry, found these beautiful nursing staff who, you know, put makeup on her and they'd sing karaoke songs together. And she had an absolute ball in the last like 8 months of her life. And it was a good nursing home. And my other grandmother, she just did not want to leave her beautiful little flat, her world that she'd created. And in the end, she had to go into a nursing home. And I just feel like there could have been more of a conversation there. So it's just
It's
hard.
so, yeah, but we've got to have the courage for those conversations. I often think about birth and birth planning, and most people would have some version of a birth plan now, and it'd also be pretty reasonable that
Yeah.
that might have to change because things may play out differently to what we hope or even expect. But we just aren't having these conversations, and we aren't creating any kind of meaningful plan together for this whole life stage.
Yes.
It's about time we did.
I think it's a great idea. And I also think, doctors should be involved too, because in both of my grandmother's cases, it was really the medical system telling us, as the children and grandchildren of these wonderful women, that they could not stay at home anymore. Despite, in one case, my grandmother going, "No, I can do it, I can do it," and doctors saying, "No, no, you can't. You have to stop going to hospital for constipation. That we have to stop this. Just you have to go into a nursing home. You can't look after yourself anymore." And she had carers coming in to help her, and it was really the medical profession, the hospital. I can remember we had to go into a round table at a hospital for her, for the doctors kind of telling us what we had to do as the relatives of this woman without her being in the room. And I feel like we were kind of railroaded into a nursing home situation because the hospital didn't have the beds or didn't want to look after this elderly woman anymore themselves. And it just felt off to me. So yes, I just feel like we need to talk more, but I think, it's an excellent idea in terms of we have birth plans. We've all had that as mothers. I know my mother had do not resuscitate a situation with herself. I think it's really good to have an end of life plan and to be able to talk about that with our elderly relatives.
Yeah.
Before the stage is reached where we have others around us making the decisions for us.
That's right. Before we're making those really rushed and panicked life-altering decisions in hospital corridors, like
Yes, yeah,
how do we bring that back to the kitchen table where we've got time and space and love and familiarity to talk about this whole chapter of life?
exactly.
Because, the overwhelming majority of people want to be at home for as
Yeah,
long as they can be. But, there's a circle here because that then goes back to the carers of those people. What does that look like for that sandwich generation? How do we get real about what's involved and how possible that might be for a family to come together for a person in that
yeah,
chapter?
yeah. I
I'm
was
really
very
curious.
sorry.
Yeah.
I was very lucky because I have great brothers. It wasn't a gendered thing with me, so it wasn't that the burden was left just on the daughter or the granddaughter. I have wonderful brothers who both stepped up in all those instances with dad, with mum, and my two grandmothers too. But I know there are others who feel like, particularly as women, that they're just burdened with the lot.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many good men out there
Yeah,
playing such an important role in this, but the data says two-thirds of caregivers in this life stage are women. They're usually the
yeah,
eldest daughter. Are you the
yeah.
eldest? I'm the
No,
eldest. And
I'm
you're not?
got 12 brothers and then me. So yeah, I'm
But
the only
it's
and the youngest daughter. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
most commonly the daughter caring for a partner or a parent.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I'm really curious, has your experience with your mum and your dad changed the way you think about your aging, and the way that, you might talk about that chapter of life with your children?
Oh, look, it's made me just want to seize life, really. Um, both my parents were such vivid livers, and it was heartbreaking for both of them towards the end of their lives that they couldn't stride out into the world. They were both had an intense curiosity about other people and places, which kept them young. And I think, physically both their bodies gave up on them, and there was a rage at that they couldn't control the physical symptoms of aging. So for me, looking at that, it's like, I just want to seize life as much as I can between now and before I become incapacitated. We've got a jokey situation, my husband and I, with our kids now. It's like, oh, they'll put us in the nursing home. Oh, which one will do it out of the four of them? All of that. But I know we will try and hold on to our independence for as long as we can.
Yeah, it's what most of us want, isn't it?
Yeah, I've just started pickleball, and it's with an older cohort of people, and it's like, oh my god, the personalities in that. I'm playing with a school friend, so we're like the youngest there in our 50s, and we just say what it's like being in a nursing home. The prickly characters and the aggressive characters, and there's some lovely people too, but it's like forced to live with these people and these personalities. It's just like, for both of us, all we can see is the horror at this stage. I shouldn't
Yeah.
say that, but I hope it's a long way off for me.
Oh, of course. Was your dad at home for a long time with his illness? Like, how did that work as
Yeah,
a family?
a nursing home. He, towards the end of his life, his second marriage had disintegrated. My mum was his first wife. So he ended up the last couple of years of his life just going from child to child, and staying with a lot of us, not all of them, but certainly probably about 4 or 5 of us that I can think of out of his 7 kids through 2 marriages. And he was just, I've got a picture of him too, but an old, I've got it, it's all my beautiful men
Oh,
on
I
the,
love that you've got these at hand.
this is when he was in national service in 1950, and that's Daddy there in the
At the
front.
front.
That beautiful face, beautiful, happy face. They're all around my desk. All my beautiful mummy and my daddy. Oh, sorry. My eyes are bad. There's that one. Who's this one? Who's this one here on the
Gorgeous.
that's Bob Gemmell. Looking very, very young. So he didn't realize, he's an old coal miner, never smoked in his life. We think it was the black dust, through a lifetime of coal mining. He was diagnosed very late in his life. I think it was really only in the last year of his life. It was like August, September of the year he died. He went in for some chemo at the Mater. I remember taking him to it. I used to drive up from Sydney to Newcastle to take him to his appointments. And he was told he had something with his heart during that round of chemo and that he would have to stay in hospital. And I think that was a mistake from that point. The hospital didn't want him to go. And basically 5 or 6 weeks later, after really aggressive radiotherapy combined with chemotherapy, we just saw him deteriorate so heartbreakingly. And the last 5 days of his life, he ended up in a hospice and a palliative care unit. It was great. It was during COVID though. So there was all.
Oh gosh. So complicated. But
yeah.
That's actually what you've just talked about there is like one of the things that I feel so strongly about. So that 5 or 6 weeks where your dad was told he had to stay in hospital, whereas really it sounds like his condition wasn't curable at that point. He needed supportive care and comfort care, and he didn't want to be in hospital.
No, he raged.
So what difference would that have made to be able to talk about options and maybe the family bringing him home to one of those 4, 5 or 6 houses